welcome to Mr. What Presents. Today we're going to be talking Theater Yugen, a show that is perfectly timed for Halloween coming up this month. We're going to be talking with Nick right here, joining us from the Theater of Yugen.
Hello. Yeah, thank you so much for having me this evening.
Thank you for crossing the street.
Of course, it was quite a long and difficult trek.
So we are in the mission. We are inviting you to find interest in this Edgar Allan Poe-based puppetry. And we have Nick here to talk to us about it. First, tell us a little bit more about Theater of Yugen and the origin of this theater. It's 40 years old in San Francisco, and what the specialty is.
Yeah, sure. So, Theater of Yugen, we were founded in 1978. We're actually moving into our 41st season right now. Theater of Yugen was created to help spread knowledge and awareness of traditional Japanese performing arts, specifically No and Kyogen, which are the oldest currently living drama forms in the world. No is a classic performance ritual. Many people call it dramatic or epic, but I like to think of it as actually a religious performance. And then Kyogen is its comedic counterpart. So it's about human lived stories, daily life, satire, foibles. Often it's described as farce or comedy. And these forms, they were started in the late 1300s, and they've made their way down the generations from teacher to student ever since. And our company's founder, Yuriko Doi, she was studying with who is now the national living treasure of Kyogen, Nomura Mansaku. And he told her that because she was such a talented and wonderful performer, and there are a number of challenges with women being accepted into the traditional arts in Japan, that if she were to go abroad, particularly here to America, this is of course back in the 70s, that she would find a much more successful career as a professional performer. So she came here and created Theater of Yugen and started teaching No and Kyogen to people here in the Bay Area.
And the meaning of Yugen, 2 syllables in Japanese. Tell us a little bit more about what that concept encapsulates.
That's an interesting one. Japanese, if you're familiar with the language, is made up of like different characters, and so each character means something. So like in Yugen, Yu means hidden or subtle, and Gen means profound or elegant. And together, the word Yugen describes a feeling that you have when you witness something profound, something that is nostalgic in a way. It's been translated a number of different ways by different people to mean anything from profound elegance to the beauty of human suffering in some translations.
And how does that translate in terms of the actor's game, the performance, the props involved? How does one carry that emotion?
That's an interesting question because I think the strongest comparison is actually in classical Indian drama, where you have the bhavas and the rasas. Bhava is the idea of the thing that the performer does, and the rasa is the feeling then that the audience gets from watching the performer do that thing. And that's how I like to think of Yugen. Yugen is like a rasa. It's what the audience feels when they see something elegant or profound or unusual happening on stage. And so the performers have to use their entire body. We use both our words and our physical forms, and we oftentimes mime things. No and Kyogen don't really have a lot of props. It's mostly just gestures. And we use that in combination with song and dance to create this beautiful, elegant moment for the audience to witness.
We have a brand new show coming up, Puppets and Poe. Perfectly timely. What is the name of our guest here, our third guest?
This is Death. This is Death from El Dorado. One of the pieces that we've been working with, of course, is Poe's description of the mythical city of El Dorado and the constant need to, or the obsession, fixation on trying to constantly get somewhere. And so one of the pieces that we've been creating for that is this wonderful puppet here, Mr. Death.
And the show starts October 3rd, runs about a month, 8 o'clock, 3 nights a week at Theater of Yugen here on Mariposa Street between Bryant and Harrison. It's a completely original play that you guys have devised from fragments of Poe, stories, poems, articles. The troupe is comprised of 6 people.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about the creative process, how the idea came flying around, and how the show started to gel.
Yeah, sure. So the group of people that we've pulled together is a hand-selected cast. In the past, we've done a combination of auditions and pulling from our company members. And this time around, led by Shannon Davis, who is our director, she and I wanted to be very sure that we got a good group of performers that could work well together and that really knew how to create and to play with one another. So we've contacted people that we've worked with in the past. We have some performers we have one performer that's new to Theater of Yugen, and we are putting this all together as a group, as a full ensemble. And so our rehearsal process, we started with just reading works, reading poems, reading short stories, articles. One of our performers is particularly attached to the Murders at the Rue Morgue, which is one of Poe's famous detective stories. And so we would read these and we would start spitballing ideas. Like, maybe it could look like this. Maybe it could look like that. What about it? What if this happened? Or what if we use this element? And then we tried to spin out from there and figure out what other kinds of things can we create? What else does this spark in our imaginations? And that's the heart of devised theater, right? In a devised production, you get together as a group and you create everything, like you said, from scraps, from the ground up. And so we went into this without having any pre-written script or without having any pre-designed items or pieces in mind. And from the moment we sat down, we started generating these different scripts and different ideas. And so even now, we're about 3.5 weeks into our rehearsal process. I can't actually say exactly what the final production is going to look like because we are still in the process of crafting and editing and refining. And like, even though I have Mr. Death here with me from El Dorado, that piece might not ultimately make it into the show. We might decide that perhaps death is not the right representation of death we want. Or maybe we don't really want to represent death in that piece anymore. Or maybe we just don't want to do El Dorado anymore.
Right.
And so in the coming weeks, we might just cut it to be able to better create the frame of an evening for our audience. Overall, the structure of the show is more like a cabaret of sorts. It's a series of vignettes based on different works, and we can work with pieces like El Dorado, or Telltale Heart, or Cask of Amontillado, or The Raven, just to name some of the more famous works. And then devising ways to express those stories or to express what those stories mean to us on stage. We've started the process of collaging them together and figuring out what order do we want these to go in, what ultimate overall story are we trying to tell. And we were so interested in this devised process because we really wanted to emphasize the concept of earth responsibility, where we are taking things that have already been used, post-consumer materials, recycled materials, and building something new out of them. So we're trying to minimize the amount of money that we're spending on new materials. We've dumped a lot of money at scrap down over by the dog patch, which is fantastic.
It's a gold mine.
It is a gold mine. We found so many cool things down there. But we're recycling pieces like that. We're just recycling whole cardboard boxes. This death is made out of hot glue, clay, an old wig head, and a bunch of black fabric we had laying around. And in that way, recycling all of that, along with recycling the words that we have from Poe, into something new and into something that means something very specific to us as performers, and hopefully then to an audience as well. And of course, Halloween was the big reason that we decided to do it now and use Poe, because Poe is frankly terrifying.
It looks like a fabulous show to go see around Halloween. Looks
Absolutely.
Very original.
Absolutely.
It's probably friendly to all age groups, or it shouldn't be for the little ones.
I think people know their children best. We do definitely drop the F-bomb occasionally in this show, and Poe was grim. He did a lot of very disturbing, dark things, especially about the murder of women and the use of dead female bodies. And so, with that in mind, I think it's best to decide: would you take your children to go see a show based on Edgar Allan Poe?
Right. Maybe teens might be more appropriate.
I would say, probably the preteen crowd.
And in terms of your props and your build, is there anything that you have in mind this week that you guys are looking for that we may have around here?
We are building a giant 2-dimensional cardboard set for a piece based on the Flying Dutchman, the classic Mariner's myth. So that's one that's coming up. And we are also working on a couple other pieces that'll be more full human body puppetry, a piece which I have brought with me today, actually. This.
Oh my.
Oh, yeah.
What a treat.
This. We're going to call him Jeremy. Yes. This is a wonderful piece. It's not quite finished yet, but here, I'm going to put it on.
Let's see. Let's see if we can put it on your camera right there. It's not even fit in the camera. It's too big.
Too huge. Too huge. So this wonderful guy, we haven't rigged him up to be able to actually be worn yet. So he's still mostly one hand here, one hand here. And the idea is that this turns the human body into a full puppet. So we're able to create really unusual puppetry-like moves just by using
Wow,
this
how
one single
fun.
piece.
And this is, people, this is a premiere sighting of a prop of this show. I don't think anybody has yet seen it outside of this studio right here. And this is, again, part of which segment, or how do you, how does it sort of blend in the presentation here?
Yeah, the piece that
Without telling us too much.
Well, the piece this was designed for is called Diddling. This was one that our director Shannon was really particularly inspired by, because Poe wrote a lot of not only his grimdark stories, but he wrote a lot of things that were very socially challenging, one could say. And diddling has a lot of connotations, as it does now, and it did then, and many of the same connotations, including the connotation of pleasuring oneself, which is sort of where this guy comes from, his giant, ridiculous, oversized face, and the gist of the entire piece is the line, man's destiny is to diddle. And if that is the case for men, then perhaps this is what we are looking at. So we're exploring that piece right now.
So you're revisiting the writing of Poe in a decolonizing manner, or you guys are trying to wrestle control over the pre-existing word? Do I understand correctly the concept?
Yes, that is one of the major points of this work, and we are looking at this as a group of artists who are queer, who are female, who are colored, who run the gamut of social experiences here in San Francisco, and looking at how do the words of, to the best of our knowledge, a cis straight white male from the 1800s, how do those words resonate with us now, and what are the things that we find most inspiring, and like how do we read those pieces? For example, like with diddling, even though it was theoretically about thievery, there is a strong connotation about the sexual nature of it. And so like that resonates with us right now, especially as people who have unusual sexual identifiers. I was particularly drawn to the Cask of Amontillado, reading it as a queer allegory. And so figuring out ways to bring that to life. And this decolonization process, this is, again, something that Shannon has really been helping us with. And it's also kind of strange for me to be talking about it because I am not Native American as Shannon is. And this has been a big part of her thrust as a professional artist, is how do we decolonize the creation process in general? So it's not just the words of Poe, but how do we take the system that we always have, that we typically use in the West to build theater, and make it one that is decentralized, that is decolonized, where we don't have a strict hierarchy of someone at the top is shouting the orders and everyone else follows suit. Yes, Shannon is the director of this piece, but she helps guide us as a group to discovering what we want to say, and to help us discover what it is that resonates with us as a unit of people. And so what she's been doing is mostly crafting exercises and suggesting pieces that we look at as a group, and then figuring out, well, what are ways that we can divide up and devise something based on that. This has not been a night of let's get together and execute the director's vision. It's not been about this is what director wants, or I'm the producer in this case and the artistic director of Theater of Yugen. So it's not about what do I want, what does Shannon want, let's make everyone else do what we want. It's figuring out how do we achieve some modicum of equal voice, so everyone feels that they are equally participating in this process.
And is this typical of this particular show, or this is the approach for every show that you direct and create?
This is much more typical, or this is specific to this show. And when we devise work as Theater of Yugen, in the past we have tried to do a more collaborative artist ensemble-based production, but it's actually directly at odds with how we learn in traditional Japan. And so, like, when I go in for my lessons, or I go in to work on knowing Kyogen, I sit down with my teacher. He tells me exactly what to do. He or she, they tell me exactly what to do, and I do it, and I do it that way until they say, okay, that's good enough, let's move on to something else. And so we in the Japanese context are very colonized in that way. Though ironically, I wouldn't say we get that practice from the West. It's very just a tradition. It's a Neo-Confucian way of teaching. But that's how, so we kind of walk that line back and forth between who is the recognized authority in the room on the subject that we're rehearsing,
Right.
and then how do we get other people's voices who are not the recognized authorities to create something that's going to mean something to other people.
So a truly collaborative process.
Yes.
Is the writ of Poe also tempered with? If some Poe purists come to see the show, is he going to be in for a surprise?
They're going to hate it.
So
There are some pieces that we are using very pure Poe text. Not Surprise Burial. I believe it's called The Sleeper, which is one of the which is a piece about two men dissecting a body. That piece, for example, is just the Poe text. We have some beautiful transition pieces we're developing, like The City and the Sea, for example, inspired, of course, by San Francisco, and using the pure text of that. But then there are things like, or even diddling, which, even though it's not necessarily Poe's intention, it is his literal words, it's word for word what he wrote. But then there are other pieces where we have taken completely contemporary dialogue, and we've made our own words, and just based roughly on that plot or on that structure, we'll create something. Or we've been really fascinated with his poem Alone, where everyone has, inspired by one or two stanzas, has written a completely original work that has almost no relevance to the original words of Poe, but they're inspired by that poem.
And there's an emphasis, I believe, in multisensory perspectives. It's an immersive experience.
Yes, it
and
is.
some of the performers, as I could read, were coming from circus backgrounds, performance backgrounds. Tell me a little bit about the Motley Crew and what the sort of current vibe 3 weeks before opening is in the creative process.
So there are six of us. We have a circus performer, a musician. I mean, it's hard to classify exactly what everyone is because they do so many things. And the vibe right now is one of pure excitement, of just joy of being able to experience and create this world together and to figure out how we can fully immerse our audience in it. We do know that from the moment you walk into our venue. We have a beautiful green awning on the street. It's very easy to find us. As soon as you cross into our venue, through that door, under that awning, we will be in the world of our imagination, of this world of puppets and Poe. We're fashioning it in a sort of post-apocalyptic way of imagining what would happen if all works in the world had been destroyed and the only surviving thing was the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe. What would that world look like? And then how do we immerse that audience in that experience throughout, from dressing our front of house staff in costume to including scenery across the house itself and including various decorations and light fixtures to make things just look extra spooky, painting the lobby in a whole new way, making the performers, from the moment the audience enters, we are performing. We are taking on characters in that world and welcoming guests in, making sure that they are seated, interacting with them even from before the curtain really goes up. So, for tickets, you can go to our website, www.theaterofyugen.org. Theater is spelled in the European way with an R-E, and Yugen is Y-U-G-E-N. You can check out tickets there. We run Thursday, Friday, Saturday at 8. Our official opening is October 4th. October 3rd is a preview. And for your viewers, there's a special preview code. If you use the code PREVIEW at checkout, tickets for October 3rd are $20.
And what a fabulous treat indeed. Is the show maybe conceived of as a recurring annual, or at this point this is a premiere and you guys getting through those gates, and then we'll see where hell is at later?
We'll see where things are at here in a couple of weeks once we've actually opened this thing. But this is definitely the kind of show we could consider bringing back, as long as people love it, and because of its modular nature, it's easy to change things up and make changes all year round.
Because Theater of Yugen is not only a venue and a troupe located here in the Mission, but you also have traveling shows, and you take them around the country or around the Bay Area?
Well, actually, we take them all around the world. Shannon and Steven and I, the three of the people working on this show, we were just in Chile at the International Festival of Theater and Dance in Iquique, which is the northern reaches of Chile. We were there for a week performing a dance that we had devised, and we were there with senior company member Luis Vaz, who was, and together we were performing Kyogen in English, which was interesting, doing Kyogen in English for a Spanish-speaking audience. But that's the joy of Kyogen, is the mime. We do our Kyogen work all around the Bay Area, all around the country, and we have performed all across the globe with it. We are the only theater company in the world that regularly does Kyogen in English. So, and that's quick, it's easy to transit. It's just a couple bodies and off you go.
And the theater, the venue here locally is within the Theater Arto building?
Yes, we're in the Project Arto complex.
Project Arto, that's right.
Yep.
Right next to Z Space. Well, let's say goodbye to Diddle here if you want to bring him back on.
Hi to Mr. Jeremy.
We can't wait to see all the action here that you guys got for us. And thank you for the visit, Nick. This has been awesome.
Thank you for having me.
And again, we're looking forward to seeing you all at Puppets and Poe, Device Defiance at Theater of Yugen. Get your Halloween costumes ready and come join the Poe extravaganza.
See you there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.